Clean, old-fashioned hate edition of Jolly Good Fellows is here. No matter what the fans from either side try to tell you, this game means a lot.
I think the past few games, Bobo, to not sound juvenile here, has really been in his bag.
And Buster Faulkner has the last two times he's played Georgia, even in 2023, when I think Tech was even more overmatched, was able to kind of move the ball up and down the field, and that was a really, really good Georgia team in 2023.
Firmly in the Heisman conversation, Patrick, Miles, what are y'all's thoughts on how he's progressed throughout the year, and what does Georgia Tech need to do to prevent those stats from getting a whole lot better this Friday?
I play with 14 guys on the field. I don't the defense.
Texas is where they really hit their stride, and momentum is a powerful thing. And I think they've ridden that the past few weeks ever since that. Whether it was a confidence thing or what, just everything coming together. It really felt after that, not just defensively, but really across the board for Georgia, that they really started to figure things out. Kirby Smart, not one to digress a lot in comparing players to anything, whether that's a former Georgia player or an opponent, that type of thing. He has given Haynes King quite a bit of respect, and for good reason, obviously, with what he did last season against this Georgia team that you could argue was a better squad than this current team.
We got it. We're due for something in this rivalry.
Amen. They absolutely are. It's 7 straight for UGA, and I'm about tired of it. In regards to the Georgia defense, none of these offenses that they are peaking against impress me very much. Is there any merit to that, Miles?
No, there certainly is.
I got it. They come out flat, I will start banging my head against wherever I'm sitting in a wall.
I'm going to say you're going to be at the game. There's not going to be any walls for you to bang your head on from whatever seat you're sitting in. So if you're a Georgia fan around Patrick during that game,
yeah, you better watch out. You better not be barking.
That's going to be an interesting point. But before we close the book on Georgia Tech's defense, I agree with you, Miles. I was seeing something different in that second half. Do you think there will be any lack of motivation for Georgia Tech or for Brent Key without the goals really being in front of them anymore?
Absolutely not. Brent's going to be bringing everything he's got to this game.
I'm going with the Jackets, 38-31.
If Georgia Tech can find themselves in a position where Haynes King's got the ball in his hands with a small amount of time to go, I would feel very, very good in that situation.
This opinion is based on what I've seen over the last few weeks. My prediction for this game is
Clean, old-fashioned hate edition of Jolly Good Fellows is here. We've got a special guest with us today. You guys see him here in the middle of the screen, Miles Garrett. Not to be mistaken with the Miles Garrett that hit Mason Rudolph in the head with the helmet, although he has been confused for him online for that guy many, many times. You've probably seen him before, but if not, Miles, why don't you give an introduction? We're so happy to have you on, man.
Yeah, Jared. Yeah, after this 18-sack performance this season, I'm strongly considering adding a Michael B. Garrett to my name now with Michael B. Jordan, what he did. But no, yeah, I appreciate the introduction. Yeah, I work at Fox 5, covering the Falcons, Georgia Tech, basically all Atlanta, Georgia teams. Been a fun season covering the Jackets and the Dogs. Obviously, a little bit of disappointment with the Jackets as of late, but certainly has been a fun ride covering this team this season. It's been really a long time coming.
Yeah, 100%. And then, of course, we got the man himself. Wasn't able to make it for our pit recap episode. Probably was a good thing. Patrick, how you doing, brother?
Yeah, it's good. I needed a little bit, another day or two to recover after that loss on Saturday. So you guys didn't want my perspective on Sunday. I had to be in timeout for a little bit.
Well, yeah, GT Payne. If you haven't checked that episode out, by the time that this comes out, it will have been out for a little over 2 days. So make sure you go watch our thoughts on the pit game, and we give a couple predictions as well, for UGA. So don't miss those. I might give another one today. We'll see if I'm feeling up to it, but I'm definitely going to put these two on the spot to see how they're feeling about that game. But yeah, clean old-fashioned hate edition. Hate week is officially here. The 119th meeting between Georgia and Georgia Tech. It's an exciting week. No matter what the fans from either side try to tell you, this game means a lot, and I'm very, very excited to get into everything that this week comes with. Georgia currently leads the series 72-41-5 for Georgia Tech. It's not been a good couple decades for the Jackets, and I'm going to take some blame because when I was born, only 17 games separated these two teams. Now we're up to almost 30, and you guys could probably say the same. It's been a rough lifespan for us as Georgia Tech fans, huh?
Yeah, no doubt. And as someone who can certainly relate to that story, the first few college football games, I think the first ever college football game I went to was the Georgia Tech game in Athens back in 2004 when Reggie Ball threw it away on 4th down. So that was my first ever college football game that I attended. I was there in 2006 in Athens when Georgia Tech was a rare favorite. They ended up losing that one, of course. So yeah, I've been on the wrong end of this rivalry for sure. Growing up, a big Georgia Tech fan, quite a bit. It's certainly been a long time since Georgia Tech has actually won in Atlanta as well. I know this game coming up is at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but I think what was the last year, 1999, that Georgia Tech won at Bobby Dodd. So it's been a minute.
Yeah, I was the ripe young age of 1 year old for that one. Patrick, what are your thoughts, man? How are you feeling?
We'll see. I mean, I think that there's going to be a lot of Georgia Tech fans that are lost hope, but I think the team, if they come out and they're fired up and really give Georgia their best shot. I mean, they're clearly better than they played against Pitt, especially on both sides of the ball, especially offensively, especially at quarterback. Also, I was talking about those '04 and '06 games. That '04 game, if that was your first college football game ever, that was freezing cold in the rain. That was
Oh
you
yeah,
probably never
I
wanted
was
to go
there.
to another one again
Yeah,
after
that
that.
was especially in my Georgia Tech gear as a 8-year-old at the time with my
Mhm.
father, who's a huge Georgia fan. My family's big Georgia fans. Yeah, that was a tough one.
Yeah, no doubt. And most recently, last year, also a freezing cold game. No rain last year, but a freezing cold game in Athens, 44-42 final after 8 overtimes for Georgia Tech. And there's still, no doubt, there's still some taste in the mouths of a lot of Georgia Tech fans from that football game. And I would like to think, and a lot of the players and head coach Brent Key, who played and coached in that football game as well. So a lot of things to look forward to, this week. Will Georgia Tech be motivated after, the goals that they set for themselves maybe are not in front of them anymore? Can the defense step up to the task? A lot of things that we're going to get into in this episode, so I'm very excited for that. But Georgia opened up, I think was it 12 or 14 and a half favorites over the
It
Jackets?
was 13 and a half. It's down to 12 and a half now. Which is like the smallest spread since 2017, and they were 11 and a half point favorite. I mean, it's been usually at least 3 score spread
Yeah, my
since
thoughts
that period.
going into the week is that no team is going to beat Georgia Tech by 14 points. Not because I don't respect Georgia, but I just think Tech's offense is too good to get beat by 14 points. And then Pitt does it in Bobby Dodd Stadium. So now I'm having some second thoughts. What are y'all's thoughts on that line?
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. Obviously, I think the big thing with Georgia Tech is yes, we know the offense can put up points. Yes, we know they can drive down the field, but they got to stop at these slow starts. It's something that's been really plaguing them all season. It wasn't just really this last couple of games against Pitt and NC State and
Mhm.
Boston College even. It's just been one of those things where they'll score points, but it's kind of these slow starts. It's really honestly something that's plagued Georgia for a majority of their games. They're starting to catch some fire right now with having more complete performances, but for the longest time, Georgia has been a very much second half team. These first couple of quarters, they really struggled at the beginning. Then I think against Texas was where they kind of picked it up. You could argue the Ole Miss game as well, but that was also really a second half performance from the Dogs. So I do. Yes, I like Georgia Tech's offense. I really don't like when Haynes King plays hero ball. I know it works a lot, and Georgia Tech resorted to that. I think a lot in that second half and really the second quarter. But it's not sustainable to win games, in my opinion. I do think that you got to get those other guys involved, whether that's Malik Rutherford, Eric Rivers. I wanted to see a lot more Malachi Hosley in that game. We asked Brent Key about that post game, and he said that maybe he was dealing with something off the first couple of plays. Wasn't quite sure what it was, didn't really elaborate. But he's been tremendous for the team this year. You got to get him involved and utilize as many weapons as you can, in my opinion.
Yeah, just one carry last week for Malachi Jose. That was very interesting. And for a guy who's probably played his way into that RB1 spot for Georgia Tech this year. Patrick, your thoughts just on that line before we get into Georgia and their season so far?
I think if the line came out in mid-October, it probably would not it'd probably be closer to around a touchdown. However, let's be honest, the way the Jackets have played the last 3 games, really they played pretty poorly. They very well could have lost 3 in a row. If you go back and you look at the BC game, so I think, and you have to give Georgia credit, they're playing as well as they played all year, and which is not good timing, as they seem to be peaking, and we kind of peaked. Like, somebody I think asked Brent in a press conference today, like, do you think you peaked too soon? And I didn't. I was hoping that we were going to peak a little bit later in the year, but still, right now there's nothing to lose. I think it takes a lot of pressure off Tech because they seem to be a little bit tight playing Pitt. Uh, and they usually, let's just be honest, Georgia Tech does not play great as a favorite. They're just, when they're getting those big spots, they lay an egg a lot of times when there's heavy expectations on them. When Georgia Tech doesn't have expectations and people doubt them, that's when I think they end up coming up to play and surprising some people.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. No better coach in college football over the last 3 seasons as an underdog than Brent Key.
Surprising some people.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. No better coach in college football over the last 3 seasons as an underdog than Brent Key. So it's a position that you want to be in, and a strangely comfortable position for Georgia Tech. I think it's 16-6 against the spread for Brent Key. I'm not sure that number has really changed much this season because they've been favorites in most of the games they've played since Clemson, really. So yeah, a comfortable position for Georgia Tech, not anything they're used to. Miles, you made some points about Georgia peaking at the right time, and before we get into that, let's kind of backtrack a little bit because it has been a pretty interesting season for Georgia. They come out, dominate against Marshall. I was watching that game with a buddy. I don't think Marshall crossed midfield or even maybe had a first down until till garbage time is what it felt like. It was a really dominant performance. Then Austin Peay happened. You're kind of scratching your head at that one a little bit, but whatever. Alabama, they can't get over the hump. But ever since then, it has seemed that they've turned a corner. A really good win against Ole Miss, a good win against Tennessee. And obviously, again, it seems that they're peaking now after a 35-10 win against Texas and a 35-3 win against Charlotte. Miles, what have you seen from Georgia? Just how have they progressed throughout the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a variety of things. I think, obviously the big one, Gunnar Stockton has looked a lot more relaxed in this Georgia offense. It looked at the beginning of the year that it seemed like at times the offense was kind of staying a little too simple, and I think that's where you were seeing all those calls, fire Bobo. Obviously, the Georgia fan base has been frustrated with Mike Bobo for a while, but I think the past few games, Bobo, to not sound juvenile here, has really been in his bag. I mean, I think these had a lot, and you really saw this in the Texas game with the variety of sets, putting guys in motion, operating, inside zone, those types of plays, because Georgia likes to run the ball a lot out of the shotgun. And I've seen a more progression of that this past couple of games. You saw Bo Walker go off in this last game, the freshman. He really hasn't done anything all year. So they're getting a lot more depth and variety out of their backs. Chauncey Bowens has been their number one guy, and he's been hurt the past couple of games. So in his place, you've had Nate Frazier. He was pretty promising last year, and he hasn't really been as good, I think, as maybe folks expected him to be coming into this year as, the number one guy. But Chauncey Bowens and this whole sort of contingency of Georgia backs has sort of lifted the entire offense up. And as going back to the original point of Gunnar Stockton, he looks comfortable, he looks efficient, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. That's something that you're going to have to take advantage of, because a guy that plays as clean as that, you really got to take advantage of the situations that are thrown your way. When you are passing the ball, you got to try to get some turnovers, because he doesn't do a lot of that. So outside of that, I mean, the receivers don't necessarily scare you. They are, however, performing very efficiently right now. Noah Thomas especially has come on strong the past couple of weeks. You lose Colby Young earlier in the year, so those receivers haven't necessarily been the Ladd McConkey types. Who is he's proven how good he is in the NFL. But also, the tight ends. Oscar Delp has really started to emerge. I've been kind of waiting for him to have that big breakout game. He was a big-time recruit coming out of Forsyth, and he's really finally sort of filling in, not to a complete T, those Brock Bowers shoes, and really getting a lot of those receptions, those first down catches. But defensively, I think is the big one, because they're finally starting to generate pressures and get to the quarterback. Early in the year, I don't think their pressure rate was as high as they wanted it to be. Now they're starting to finish those plays and really dominate in the trenches. So that's something Georgia Tech's going to have to prepare for. I know it's one of those situations where their offensive line is a good unit. You like what Brent Key has done there, but from a sheer size and talent perspective, Georgia's got it. And they're really going to have it across the field at most positions, but specifically there in the trenches is where you really notice it.
Sure, yeah, kind of another thing that Georgia Tech's pretty used to, kind of on paper at least, being at a talent disadvantage in a lot of games they play. That's some great analysis, though. I mean, where else are you guys going to get that before this game? Shout out to Miles for going into detail there about UGA so far this year. Patrick, do you watch UGA football?
I mean, I try to watch them when they lose. They're rare times when Tech wins and Georgia loses. And let's be honest, Georgia hasn't lost a ton during the regular season the last several years, so it's been tough. I do watch games, but if they get out of hand, I turn it off, because I just don't enjoy it. I can't stand it. I watched like the Tennessee game earlier this year. I watched the Alabama game. There's the Auburn game. I watched some of those close games that Georgia had sort of before they turned a corner against like Mississippi State and Texas the last couple of weeks. But I do think that Georgia is defensively is probably not quite as dominant as they were a couple of years ago. But I think that has to do more with like I think in our first episode we were talking about the transfer portal creating a little bit more parity. So I think that gap between Tech and Georgia's closer, and it's because of the portal. I think Georgia's got a talent advantage, probably especially on the defensive side of the ball. They're compared to like our defense. If you do like a starter for starter, I don't know if there's a starter on Tech's defense that would start for Georgia. I think on offense, there's probably several Tech players. I mean, on the offensive line, Keelan Rutledge. I mean, I'm sure that Isaiah Canyon or Eric Rivers would probably be in the receiver rotation. It's much more fair fight. But so I think Tech's getting closer there, but it's not quite there on the defensive side of the ball if they really want to, be able to go, blow for blow with Georgia just from a pure talent perspective.
Yeah, sure. You made a good point about their defense, and that's kind of been something that's been a talking point for the Bulldogs just throughout the year. And I think it really started, Miles, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like it really started against Tennessee. Joey Aguilar finishes that game with 371 yards and 4 touchdowns. And let's be honest, if that kid for Tennessee, I don't know his name, but you could see it in his eyes when he walked on the field. That kick wasn't going in. But if it does, could be a different story, for Georgia this year. But it seemed like that game really was the first where you started to see some defensive flaws, particularly in the passing game for Georgia. And maybe they've improved some since then, but curious your thoughts on that, Miles.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of a mixed bag because obviously they lost to Alabama the ensuing week, but I was at that Tennessee game actually, and that was really a game where it was the first time in a long time when I've covered Georgia, and I've covered a lot of their games the past few seasons, that I felt that Georgia was actually in danger of losing a game. And the fact that they came back and won it, no one was panicking on their sideline. It was such a Kirby Smart-esque game for them where it's just like, we're still Georgia. We've still got your number. Like, we're not going anywhere, that type of thing. And the Alabama one, I honestly, I know Tech fans will hate to hear this, but I want to give that one a little bit of a mulligan. I have a lot of Alabama roommates and friends and that kind of thing that we're all just, complaining that, Alabama, that game, they barely won it, some Georgia fans, whatever. I think that was just a great game between two phenomenal teams, and Alabama came out on top. Yes, Georgia has not been able to beat Alabama, and that's very, very present, very valid argument. But at the same time, those were two heavyweights going at it, and I think that was the best sort of matchup you could have asked for there. But going back to all of this, as far as defensively is concerned, again, I keep going back to that Texas game just because that was, I think, their first one since Alabama. And yeah, they held Auburn in check too. You can argue that fumble all you want. But I do think that that Texas game was really the big one because they gave up a lot of yards against Florida. I mean, that was another one where, it was coming right down to the wire, the Florida offense rolling, that type of thing. But I think Texas is where they really hit their stride. And momentum is a powerful thing. And I really think they've ridden that the past few weeks ever since that, whether it was a confidence thing or what, just everything coming together. It really felt after that, not just defensively, but really across the board for Georgia, that they really started to figure things out.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. The Alabama game too was interesting as well because Patrick, I felt like I could see the steam coming out of your ears when he said you got to give him a mulligan. All
Oh,
jokes aside, though.
he said I didn't give him the mulligan though. Don't worry.
I felt like that was it was early in the season and like you said two powerhouse teams going at it and I don't know if Gunnar Stockton had really hit his stride by that point either.
Yeah,
He's been
I
a
agree.
different player in the back half of this season. Let's take a look at his numbers real fast. 2,465 passing yards, 71% completion, by the way. That's a great number and they really don't turn the ball over either. Just 4 interceptions on the year and 19 touchdowns for Gunnar Stockton. Add another 361 yards and 8 touchdowns, a surprising number to be quite honest if you're a Tech fan, on the ground for Gunnar. Firmly in the Heisman conversation. Patrick, Miles, what are y'all's thoughts on how he's progressed throughout the year and what does Georgia Tech need to do to prevent those stats from getting a whole lot better this Friday?
I play with 14 guys on the field. I don't the defense hasn't given me much hope
Yeah.
that they're going to be able to stop Georgia's offense as well as they played. And Gunnar Stockton's a good player. He's pretty similar play style, I would say, to Haynes King a little bit, just the kind of gritty leaders. I think that they both like have that same leadership style and sort of similar players in terms of they can affect in the run and pass game. I think if Georgia Tech has to get lucky and let Gunner throw about 2 picks, and Georgia Tech has only forced 6 turnovers all year, which is almost like insane. I can't even get words out how crazy that is. But if they could somehow get Gunner to maybe throw 2 interceptions, steal a possession or two, and then that's I think that they would have to be able to stop him because whenever the defense was playing a little bit better earlier in the season, it was mainly they would kind of steal a couple possessions, get some stops in the red zone, miss field goals. So if they can do that, I think the offense will put up some points, and I don't think that you're going to have another bad game like you did this past Saturday out of Haynes King. I just don't see that happening 2 games in a row.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with basically all those points. Gunner is extremely efficient. I've said it already. He's just a guy that, and I think Kirby Smart was actually asked about this in his press conference today, as far as the similarities are concerned with him and Haynes King, and obviously, Kirby Smart, not one to digress a lot in comparing players to anything, whether that's a former Georgia player or an opponent, that type of thing. He has given Haynes King quite a bit of respect, and for good reason, obviously, with what he did last season against this Georgia team that you could argue was a better squad than this current team. Again, like we said, Georgia peaking right now, they're peaking at the right time. But I'd argue that last year's team was better than this squad. And I think you could argue the same thing for Georgia Tech. I think this year's squad obviously was better than last year's squad. So on paper, you would seem that, this could potentially be good. It's just that whole peaking aspect of what Gunner's doing and, sort of the what's the right word? The degradation of sorts of this Georgia Tech defense the past few weeks. It's kind of leading to a perfect storm that, you're just hoping that there can be some adjustments by this Blake Gideon defense, because so far, I mean, it's been sort of like Swiss cheese. Again, I think that second half against Pittsburgh was certainly promising. They were finally getting those stops, finally forcing those 3-and-outs, but Georgia's a hell of a lot better than Pittsburgh.
Yeah, sure thing. No, both of you guys made some really good points that I want to get to. But before we get, fully close the page on the defense, I want to talk about one thing. And Miles, you'll have to give some perspective here, because 8 touchdowns on the ground for me is what really jumps off the page about Gunner. Obviously, the passing stats are great, but most people expected him. I think the verdict was still kind of out at the beginning of the season, but it's not as surprising to see him be so effective in the air to me as it is to see him have 8 rushing touchdowns. How are most of those coming to be? Is it like goal to go situations? Is he just kind of being the tush push, punch it in kind of guy for Georgia, or is he really using his legs to scramble and find the end zone?
He's using his legs. They really haven't run a lot of these quarterback sneaks or really quarterback draws for that matter. You see Haynes King do a lot of those. You don't see that. It's a lot of play action rollouts or read option, that type of thing where Gunner's looking out of the pass. It's not a lot of design runs. So it's a lot of improvisation that let's be honest, Georgia Tech has struggled a lot against, specifically against Pitt, and you've seen it the past few weeks. He's very, very good at improvising and creating plays that aren't there because his priority isn't to run. And I do think this is a improvement of sorts out of Gunner Stockton. I think earlier in the season, he was trusting his legs a little too much, and I think that he was, the first read not there, he takes off because, back at Rabun County, he used his legs quite a bit. That was something that he brought to the table that was a really strong element of his game, and you saw it a little bit last year at the tail end in the SEC championship game as well. So it is an element that you have to prepare for, but at the beginning of the year, I do think that he was sort of first option not there, maybe second option not there, I'm going to take off. Whereas now, I think he's a lot more comfortable in his progressions as far as passing the ball is concerned. And yes, he still does use the run when he can because he's a lot more confident, I think, in this offensive system now that he has basically a full season under his belt now.
Yeah, sure thing. That's pretty interesting. I mean, like you said, Georgia Tech defense definitely been a point of weakness for them with allowing the quarterback to scramble. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it seems like every game you're just letting the opposing quarterback just go off. Patrick, any insight there or any numbers that you have to support that?
No, I just can watch the games usually, and you can see it pretty quickly. I mean that they've really struggled, and I mean they've made some quarterbacks, pretty average quarterbacks, look really good this year. So they did. The promising thing was, like Miles was saying, the second half against Pittsburgh, especially getting pressure on the quarterback, because that's going to eventually be able to lead to making a quarterback make a bad mistake or getting a fumble, and that's what they're going to have to do against Georgia. I think win the turnover battle, which they just haven't done this year. I think in any game, I mean, maybe they did it against Duke. It was the last time I think they won the turnover battle, and so if they can do that, uh, and obviously not turn the ball over themselves, don't spot Georgia any points, I think that they can be competitive. But I've been impressed with Gunnar Stockton. For this, I thought that Georgia had downgraded at quarterback when Carson Beck left. I didn't quite see Gunnar, but I'd say it's upgraded maybe a little bit in some ways, especially just with his ability to run the football as well.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about the turnover battle and stuff like that because I feel like that's going to be an interesting point. But before we close the book on Georgia Tech's defense, I agree with you, Miles. I was seeing something different in that second half. Outside of the one play at the end of the game, or, not at the end of the game, but what essentially ended the game when Ja'Kyrian Turner busted through the middle of the field and ran for 56-yard touchdowns, icing the game. Prior to that, the team was playing really well defensively. Patrick, you're someone who I know feels emotionally the same way that I do about this Georgia Tech team. Do you think that there was something that was discovered in that second half, and is it something that can be replicated against Georgia, or am I just grasping for straws here?
We'll see. I think that the pressure on the quarterback, I'm really concerned that might just be that Pitt's offensive line just is not very good, which it's not. They give up a lot of sacks, and they have all year. But Pitt has a good offense, and Georgia Tech was not stopping anybody before the second half of Pitt, like the previous three games. So it's something to build off of, right? And again, Tech, the defense is as bad as they played. I mean, they certainly, you're not going to say if you give up 42 points, or I guess it's 35 points, that the defense played well. But they Georgia Tech's offense, they don't have those two turnovers. I'd say that Georgia Tech probably wins that game.
Sure. Yeah, and some interesting points there. And we talked about the turnover battle, and I think that's something that's going to be really important for this game. Is Georgia Tech going to force two turnovers, whether it's by fumble or interception? Probably not. But are the odds any better for Georgia? I don't know if the numbers say that they are. According to TeamRankings.com, 103rd in takeaways per game. Miles, is that right? Have they been struggling to create some turnovers as well?
Yeah, for sure, and I think that goes to the fact of the youth of the defense. Again, like you mentioned earlier, this isn't the same defense that we've seen the past couple of years. Even last year with a guy like Jalen Walker doing what he was doing, as well as Malachi Starks. So you lose both of those guys, and Michael Williams even. I forgot, another first round pick. It feels like there's three every single draft, but. Yeah, I mean, this isn't denying Georgia's talent. They're very talented on that defensive front, and I think sort of the X factor, I think, for Georgia Tech in this game for them will be KJ Bolden. I think KJ Bolden is an incredible talent. He's a first round talent in my opinion, and he's been able to create a lot of plays back there defensively. He's come very close to a few different takeaways, and I do think that they're coming on a little bit strong. I feel like I'm using that term a lot with Georgia, coming on strong, but they really are defensively and figuring things out. And like I said, it goes back to the trenches. They're creating more of that pressure rate. So pressure rate creates turnovers. This Georgia Tech offensive line is going to have to account for that.
Yeah, for sure. There's one thing that I want to talk about, and it's Kirby Smart giving a lot of praise to Buster Faulkner and the Georgia Tech offense. Says nothing's comfortable about defending an offense that can hurt you in many ways. I think it was today in his press conference. Gave Buster a lot of credit. Says he does a lot of good things and did a lot of good things while he was there. But in regards to the Georgia defense, I'm gonna have a Tech fan moment here. None of these offenses that they are peaking against impress me very much. Is there any merit to that, Miles?
No, there certainly is. No, absolutely. I'm not going to deny that one. Excuse me. Yeah, Charlotte is what they are. Mississippi State are what they are at this point. Again, the opponents have not been of the caliber of SEC opponents that you fret your teeth about. So there is that is definitely an important thing to do. And for any team, get right games are called get right games for a reason. So that definitely is something to take into account. But again, they have done this in spot duty throughout the season. Like I said, the Auburn game, Tennessee, they gave up an incredible amount of points. It was something that went to overtime, obviously. So Florida, another game that the defense did not perform well. So the film is there, right, for how to defeat this Georgia defense and kind of score points on them. Teams have done it this season. It's just a matter of maybe take advantage of maybe laying a little low the past couple of weeks. Maybe they haven't been given a true test. That's something Georgia Tech, I think, can offer.
Yeah, absolutely. You before we finish on the defense, there's a couple things here that I think are pretty interesting because if you're a Georgia Tech fan and you're doing some research on Georgia, and again, the story it feels like up until these last few weeks has kind of been about the defense, but when you look at the stats, it's kind of hard to find stats that support they're not a good defense, at least as a collective. Rushing defense, it appears is very, very solid, but it's in the passing game where it looks like they've struggled. 53rd in opponent passing yards per game, 36th in yards per pass and 43rd in completion percentage. Also 122nd in sack percentage. I was very surprised to see those numbers. But Georgia Tech, mostly known as a team that can hurt you on the ground. Patrick, I'll let you get to this one first. Outside of Haynes King and Malachi Hosley this year, it's not been a great rushing attack for Georgia Tech. Do you think that they've got what it takes? Do you think that we have what it takes to go out there and really get the passing game together and do what we got to do to move the ball effectively against the Georgia defense?
Yeah, I think that Tech will be fine. Georgia struggles. I mean, against quarterbacks, they're able to really run the ball. That's been kind of a kryptonite for Kirby, if there has been one on defense. And Pitt did a good job. That was probably the worst performance Georgia Tech had all year running the ball was against Pitt this past week. I don't see that happening again. I think that Georgia Tech will be able to move the ball against Georgia. The big question is, hey, can they punch in the end zone? The red zone offense is so key. I just still sometimes the play calling down there, it gets a little bit cute. And Buster Faulkner has the last two times he's played Georgia, even in 2023, when I think Tech was even more overmatched, was able to kind of move the ball up and down the field, and that was a really, really good Georgia team in 2023 that he went up and down the field on. And then last year, Haynes King had a great game, and I know that he still lost it, but it was one of the better performances of his career. So I think if Tech will be able to run the ball, I'm not too worried about the offense going up against Georgia's defense.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, that's good stuff out of you there, Patrick. I always love to hear your very one-sided takes about Georgia
Yeah,
Tech.
I mean, I'm not gonna. Yeah, so I am worried about the defense. I'll say that, but I can't come on here. I gotta give Georgia Tech its due. We're due for something in this rivalry. It's
Amen.
got.
Amen. They absolutely are. It's 7 straight for UGA, and I'm about tired of it. I'm sure we can all say the same. And one thing that concerns me going into this game, we just said it, 7 straight, and the last one being the one that probably has hurt the most out of the last 7. And leading up to this football game, up until last week, in my head, I'm thinking, all right, this is a game Georgia Tech can win. And I'm not going to say that I don't feel that way anymore because I absolutely think that they can win this football game. But without their goals in front of them, are they still going to be as motivated to finish this season strong as they might have been prior to this Pitt game? Miles, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to talk to Brent Key since the Pitt game or if you did the Kirby interviews today, but you tell me how you feel about that. Do you think there will be any lack of motivation for Georgia Tech or for Brent Key without the goals really being in front of them anymore?
Absolutely not. As someone that has spoken to Brent Key in private on multiple times, multiple occasions, interviewed him, and also really spoken to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Rusty Manziel, one of our big analysts that we use for our Georgia shows, very tight with Kirby Smart and very tight in the coaching circles. Brent's going to be bringing everything he's got to this game, and that's it's going to, I think, translate to the team as well. This is something that has stuck with him for 365 days now, and really beyond that. I mean, we all know Brent Key's motivation behind. He's Georgia Tech man through and through. Played in this rivalry, won a game in this rivalry. There is merit to that, and I do think there is something to the fact that when speaking to Georgia Tech players, after the NC State game, after this past game. The NC State game, I don't remember if it was Haynes King or not that might have said it, but he was talking about how the pressure of, the Heisman and, all this other stuff, it weighed on him. The team did look a little tight. And I think that's something that was prevalent for this team. And, even before the Pitt game, the players, I forgot which players specifically it was, but I think one of the questions was in regards to senior night and talking about the emotions of, everyone wanting to play, their own game, hero ball, that type of thing. There is maybe perhaps some merit to the fact that Georgia Tech has been playing a little tight the past few weeks. Now, again, it sounds bad because the goals are still ahead of them. Theoretically, they can still make the ACC championship, just not, you don't really have that control over your own destiny anymore. I think they're going to be playing a hell of a lot more loose coming this Friday. And obviously, given the nature of the game, given the nature of the rivalry, and really at the point now where Tech doesn't really have anything to lose at this point. If you don't control your college football destiny anymore, if you were to win that game against Pittsburgh and already had that ACC championship spot locked up, knowing that you could still make the playoff, I think that the pressure is a lot less going into this game now.
Sure, and I think that's a good counter argument, honestly, to the question is that maybe they're more motivated because they know that their chances of making the ACC championship are pretty slim, and if they want to have any kind of chance of making the playoff, a win against Georgia will be absolutely essential. Obviously, still be a slim chance, but a chance nonetheless. Patrick, what do you think, man? Tell me the same thing that he just said.
I mean, my God, if they come out flat, I will start banging my head against wherever I'm sitting in a wall. If they come out flat and they don't have a fast start, you have to. This is an opportunity, a team that your biggest rival. You have to come out and be able to play like you can still have a special season, go 10-2, 11-2, and who cares? Like, go out, lay on the line, let's win. We can be aggressive. I think Miles said it. They can come out, they can play loose. There's not pressure on Haynes King. His Heisman campaign probably kind of came to an end the other night. The ACC title isn't in our hands, so we don't have to worry about that. And I was even worried about myself. I was like, am I going to come out flat to this game? Because I don't even know if I'm going to be happy to be there or whatnot. But now I know I'm going to bring it on Friday. I've kind of decided, and I'm in the mindset. So I think that the team will probably be there as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to be at the game. There's not going to be any walls for you to bang your head on from whatever seat you're sitting in. So if you're a Georgia fan around Patrick during that game.
Yeah, you better watch out. You better not be barking.
Yeah, watch out. It may or may not be intentional, and it's going to look like a lot like a headbutt. And speaking of that, this game is at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I'm just curious both y'all's thoughts on that. I mean, for me, when it was first announced, I'm like $10 million. That could come in handy. Obviously, now with the season that Georgia Tech has had, it feels less and less advantageous despite the money. Miles, what do you think? Just about that kind of trade-off that J-Bat made and the situation that Georgia Tech finds himself in now, playing this game away from Bobby Dodd.
Yeah, I mean, I feel exactly the same way you do. Going into this season and, when the deal was announced, obviously we've seen the Georgia Tech attendance numbers the past few years. And yes, they have been improving, but nothing of this season, like the Clemson game, the Pitt game for that matter. You haven't been seeing crowds like that at Georgia Tech for a very, very long time. So in that regard, yeah, it is really unfortunate given the nature of the rivalry and how good the team has been this year. That the crowd at Bobby Dodd would have been terrific, probably the best you've seen there in quite some time. But at the end of the day, Georgia Tech, you have to keep in mind, I honestly want to call it year one of the potential of what Georgia Tech can do. Obviously the departure of J-Bat, you now have a new athletic director in Ryan Alpert. This is really continuing the growth of this athletics department. You're having a complete rehaul of renovations at Bobby Dodd Stadium. You now have this huge deal, quadrupling your current or your last deal with Adidas, now with Under Armour, $10 more million now in the program. It's something that's hard to say no to, and honestly, in hindsight, I probably wouldn't have said no to it either.
Take it away, Patrick.
Yeah, I get it. $10 million, but I'm not sure what the disbursement, the number is going to be on Friday, the crowd breakdown. Maybe 50. I don't know if it'd be 50. I'd say it might be 60-40 Georgia, but because I don't know. And Miles is shaking his head, so maybe he has inside numbers that I don't know about. I'm probably not going to want to know, because if it was at Bobby Dodd, people joke about Georgia Tech. They wouldn't not like if Tech is good and they have a decent product on the field. Tech fans will show up for that game, and it's still a lot of red in the stadium, but it's not anything like it was during the end of the Jeff Collins era where it was just embarrassing. But I don't know what the breakdown is, and that's one of the really frustrating parts about the deal that J-Bat made. I don't know. It's just how it was not included in the season ticket package. And those prices, I mean, so if it was included in the season ticket package, I would honestly feel a lot better because, that'd be kind of like your 25,000, 30,000 guaranteed Tech fans that are season ticket holders. And I don't know, it's going to be weird. I don't even know if it's going to be is it going to say like the Invesco QQ Classic at midfield, or is it still going to say Georgia Tech in the end zone? It's technically our home game still, right? So I don't know how that's going to go. Look, Georgia Tech hasn't won that game at Bobby Dodd Stadium since I was 4 years old. So if we win it at Mercedes-Benz, I'll take it. I like $10 million is $10 million. But this is the last time I ever want this game to be at Mercedes-Benz when it's supposed to be on the flats.
Yeah, I think the fans have made that pretty clear. Ryan Alpert sends out the email earlier this year giving us the opportunity. Do you want the Tennessee or the Colorado game to be at Mercedes-Benz and we make a little money? Or is it all right if I bump your season ticket prices up and we can keep those games at Bobby Dodd? And again, I think the message was well received. Obviously, both of those games will be at the home stadium next season. So pretty excited about that. And yeah, I mean, both y'all made some great points. I'm a little concerned now, Miles, after seeing you shake your head. I can't help but feel like you might know what these ticket sales might look like. But I guess that's to be found out on Friday. And if Georgia Tech wins, and can that be considered a win in Atlanta after 20 plus years of not winning the game in Atlanta? Hopefully, that's another thing that we'll find out on Friday. And just getting to that point, are either of you guys willing to make a prediction here on the air, or are we going to save those for Saturday? I'm sorry, Friday.
I'll let you go first, Patrick.
Yeah, so if you go on my Twitter, I don't know, I tweeted out to one of the Georgia beat writers, Rodney Nabulsi. He said, "What's your prediction?" And I said 51-2 Tech, and then he said also name the player. I thought it was Alec Ogletree for Georgia, but I named the Tech player Stephen Hill. I don't think it'll quite be 51-2. I think it's going to be a close game. If Georgia Tech comes out and has a quick start, look, Georgia has a hex over Tech right now. It's sort of similar to maybe how Alabama has something over, even in close games against Georgia. In my lifetime, there's been a lot of really close games, and Georgia always seems to get that big play, that go their way, like, that Haynes King fumble at the end of the year last year. So I'll say that Georgia probably does win, but I'm going with the Jackets, 38-31.
Amen.
Okay. Oof. This is tough.
You're put on the spot here. I know you have to be objective, so do what you got to do.
So I'll say this. This opinion is based on what I've seen over the last few weeks. I'm taking out the gut feeling. I'm taking out the back of my head notion based on what I have seen over the course of the last month. My prediction for this game is 38-24 Georgia.
That's actually pretty fair. I was expecting more.
You also said based off the past month, because I bet your prediction a month ago was probably a little bit different.
A lot different.
Yeah,
a lot different. Yes.
Right?
A lot different. But I say that saying I would not be surprised in and of the slightest if this comes down to the last 5 minutes of the game. I mean, I feel like it could go either way in this. It's just one of those games where you hope to finally see sort of that Iron Bowl mentality of, no matter how bad a team is in the rivalry, no matter what, that game's going to come down to the very wire. It could be, 0-9 Auburn against 10-0 Alabama. Auburn will still potentially win the game. It seems like that happens every single year. So I'm hoping that's now the case with this rivalry. Obviously, we've seen it the last couple of years. I mean, even 2 years ago when Georgia was never really in danger of losing the game, they still only won by a touchdown. So all those things considered, I would not be surprised in and of the slightest if Georgia Tech wins the game or comes down right there at the very end.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought as well. I really think it could hopefully come down to who has the ball last. And I said this on the episode that just came out, again, recording this on Monday. So our recap / early look at this game just came out. And I said this on that episode, but if Georgia Tech can find themselves in a position where Haynes King's got the ball in his hands with a small amount of time to go, I would feel very, very good in that situation.
I will interject on that real quick. With this game, I unfortunately do think it's going to have to be Haynes King playing hero ball again. I do think that the way he plays, the mentality, the way this offense is built for success, I don't want him pissing blood once again.
If he gets the win and he does it, then
at the end of the day,
see what he has to do.
You might have to, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the way he plays, and it's the way Georgia Tech finds success. So that's my 2 cents there.
I think he'd be willing to trade a couple days of peeing blood for a victory over UGA.
And this is his legacy. This is his last chance. There's not,
What's
no
a couple
matter what he's got to. This is a chance for him to really, what he's always going to be remembered highly of Tech fans, but winning this game is going to, let's be honest, it'd put him up. It'd be a huge difference between losing and winning this game for his legacy.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think he's already getting the Joe Ham comparisons. The difference right now is that Joe Ham had a pretty good record against UGA. So just having one for Haynes King would do a lot for how he's remembered at Georgia Tech. And I mean, again, I agree with what both of y'all said. if the defense plays the way that they have been, for the last month, like you were saying, Miles, I like the score that you predicted, to be honest. Did you say 38-24?
I said 38-24. Yeah.
Okay. See, I was thinking 42-24. So I was
See,
actually a little
I will say the 38. It was me trying to be nice.
I was feeling a little bit more harsh, but that's only if the defense plays like that, which I'm not sure they will, because again, I'm thinking they might have found something in the second half. In which case, give me the Jackets by a last minute touchdown at Mercedes-Benz. Crowds goes wild, the roof blows off the place, and we're all celebrating, carrying the goalpost back to the president.
We will take. Yeah, I'm sure that the Mercedes-Benz secure. I will. Will They did put the Georgia Tech students up in the 300 section, the 1,000 tickets that they allocated.
We'll find our way down.
That was
pretty
that was something they should have made it to where they got more than 1,000 student tickets for Georgia Tech. That's just a side note. That was horrible.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would imagine J-Bat had some negotiating power when that was being discussed, but whether or not he
doesn't
fought
have to worry
for
about it
that-
anymore because he's not here.
Yeah, he's worried about much bigger things at Michigan State right now. But anyways, yeah, I think it could be fun. Carry the goalpost back to the president's mansion at Georgia Tech is what I hope will be the case. But this has been fun, guys, and I think this is going to be a fun rest of the week. Again, we're only recording this on Monday night, so a lot to look forward to for the rest of the week, and things could look different come game time. We don't have injury reports for Thursday, so we'll have to see how things look then. But we'll have to just see how the week progresses, but I'm very excited. I'm very appreciative of both of you guys jumping on here again and joining us. Any final remarks before we get out of here? Miles, Patrick, I'll let you guys take the floor.
Yes, please, for the love of God, please wear a gold helmet with the white Georgia Tech on there. I'm so sick of the GT logo that's not colored in. I can't see it. I can't stand it. It is a thing that grinds my gears now at this point. So that's what I'll leave this off of.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Look, Tech fans, if you haven't gotten any tickets for this game, go buy tickets. You're Tech grads, you probably make good money. I know it's a little bit pricey. I'm already worried about how trying to play a road game, a mile from our stadium. So do that and look, let's go get them. We owe these guys, and I'm gonna go and give it my all as a fan. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'll be there as well, Miles. I'm sure you can say the same. If you happen to bump into any of us, please do say hello. It's great to meet a lot of you, by the way, at the Pittsburgh game. Hopefully we'll have the opportunity to do that on Friday. We'll be tailgating all morning. So, again, if you see us, say hi, Miles. You're obviously welcome to swing by. We'll have some good eats if you can make some time before you get to the press box. But thank you all again for listening. It's been a pleasure. For Miles Garrett and Patrick May, this is Jared Hallis signing off from the Jolly Good Fellows.